The Jewish Ark of the Covenant. Do you know that story? The ark that is carried by the army before God is never defeated. Let's talk about what this is. The Ark of the Covenant still exists. It was carried by the Jews. And where did it go? It's still there. It's in the same place it's always been. And it's still being carried by the same people who are still not looking inside. It's a metaphor. It is also something that is said that when it is carried, you cannot touch it. And when it was starting to fall and someone was going to prevent it from hitting the ground, they were killed. They touched the ark. Why would God do that? A spiritual seeker will understand the analogous verbiage that is being used and know that being killed by the ark is a good thing, not a bad thing. Okay, after having said that, let's get there. Let's go ahead first and let's do a little bit of groundwork. Let's go ahead and talk about what the ark is. And I'm going to be using just information from a Bible study site here. It makes it easier for me to do this. I'm okay with talking about what their beliefs are because this is how it gets carried. These are the carriers of the ark right here. Of course, there are many who believe it is literal, absolutely literal, that it just happened the way it's written. You don't question that. There are other people who go, yeah, you question that, and you realize it can't be literal. We have to look into it. We have to analyze it. We have to process it. We've got to dig into it more. It is a metaphor. We're going to go there. However, what does the metaphor get to? People are looking to see how the metaphor proves God. And I'm going to say that the metaphor isn't for that, that is still part of the ark. All right, let's go ahead and read what is about the ark. And I'm not going to talk extensively on these because it's just going to take a whole lot more to it. There are a lot of analogs in here that are going to take time to unpack, and I don't want to do it in this video. There is, we'll see what the interest is. What was inside the Ark of the Covenant? What we had, it initially housed 2 tablets that were written upon them with the finger of God, the 10 Commandments. That's from Exodus 25:16. These tablets written on both sides were actually a second copy made by the Eternal after Moses broke the original ones due to Israel's sins. For you following along that are trying to figure this stuff out, that's a cycle happening of bad stuff right there. In reviewing this, I realize I should clear that up a little bit more. So if you look at it, the 10 Commandments, we're looking at 10 concepts that somebody at that point in time came up with and said, these are what you must have. However, write them in an analogous term. Take them from the psyche and turn them outward. We got one that tells us not to covet our neighbor's wife, and you would think, well, okay, but it doesn't really do much for the mind to correct much beyond that. People that think this is the greatest thing in the world, that's kind of ridiculous. You shouldn't covet anything. You shouldn't live with a covetous heart. But here is what this gets to. In the spiritual realm, our wife is our soul, our subconscious, our spirit. We should not be coveting somebody else's life. We have our own to live. Those are the kind of things we're looking for in the 10 Commandments. However, what happened? At first, we don't obey them. We're the Israelites that are not paying attention. That is the early part of us. So they get smashed, and it has to be reestablished again later on. If you wanted to make comparisons like with the Enuma Elish, you'll see at some point in time the first person that's going to be defeated later gets the plaque of destiny put upon their chest. And later that plaque of destiny is handed off to Marduk, who's going to go back and get it. This is what that is representing. This is the plaque of destiny. This is us. This is our initial self, God, giving us the commands. Here, live this kind of a life. That's going to be at the age of 7, before first sin. So we start out, we're up on the mountain, we get all of this stuff, everything is okay, we head back to life. We come down off of the mountain, and we find out that ourselves are not on board. This is representing that we are not ready to make the change. And we lose that plaque. This is like a failure of making it, succeeding along the path. So you go try it again. Go back and get the plaque of destiny once again. And we know all along what we're supposed to do. Again, representing a failure cycle there in the story that reflects our own inner path. Those are the elements that continue to emerge. And the analogs, you have to shift them all. Sometimes they don't sound like they need to, but they do. Let's say I want to fast. In the physical world, I don't consume. In the spiritual world, mind quiet. I don't consume. Shh. In the physical world, I don't want to go outside naked. In the spiritual world, I want to live naked. In the physical world, you want to cover your body. In the spiritual world, you don't want to have to cover anything up. They'll shift. In the physical world, to destroy something means to make it. Is that good? If you've got something in here to destroy, would you destroy a child? Would you destroy an offspring? What if that offspring was disobedient? We struggle with that. We can't treat them as any more than analogs. The offspring is, my drinking is out of control. That's an offspring from my problems. But I got a hold of it. It's done now. I've destroyed a bad offspring. Whew. You got to make the transition. Everything has to be converted. And, you know why I say that? Everything has to be converted if you want accuracy and consistency. If you don't convert everything, we're cherry picking. God, in order to quell complaints by the Israelites against Moses, commanded each of the 12 tribes give him a staff with the tribal leader's name written upon it. For the tribe of Levi, however, was to have Aaron's name written upon it. The Lord's plan was to show through Levi's staff that Aaron and his tribe were specially chosen amongst all Israel to serve him. That's a selection process for Aaron. Aaron is going to be one of the characters that would be a monomyth. That you would be Aaron. Look for that beginning right there when you see a choosing like that. Miraculously, a day after the staffs were placed in front of the Ark of the Covenant, Aaron's staff not only sprouted, but also budded, blossomed, and produced almonds. And it came to pass on the next day, Moses went into the tabernacle of witness, and behold, the rod of Aaron for the house of Levi had budded and brought forth buds, and had bloomed blossoms, and had yielded almonds. These are analogs for something else. These are not literal. This staff is not budding almonds. But there is a reason for this story. I haven't given it much more than even cursory thinking, but here initially it looks to me like generally in the teaching there's an initial growth that is pure before bad things begin growing from the garden. Almonds, I believe, here are being represented as something that is good emerging from our garden that begins to, at first, you're a chosen person, number one, and that emerges as in the selection process. And then we have a staff, whatever that is. There's gardens, there are different things. In creation, it tells us that plants are produced, and they're produced from the seeds, which when they grow gives fruit, which produces more seeds, that produces more, which is meant to engage us with this cyclical life idea that whatever we experience in life and how we experience life, how we judge life and hold life, is going to emerge as continually being our life. And that the almonds in this case are not all over the place. They sound like in the beginning, before all of that bad stuff grows in, that at this point it's almonds and it's being put away in the ark and it's being stored there and kept safe. Now later the ark is going to disappear and there's going to be issues. We're going to lose touch with what that is in this what I imagine is going to happen in this story. But that's how these tend to read and look the same. You see the plants growing from somewhere. You see similar things happening in the story at the same places. The people that say this is just hogwash, there's nothing to it, you're wrong. The people that say this is the truth, it's factual, it happened this way, you're wrong. But that's where the masses are going to be. And I want to be clear in my verbiage here. If you completely deny this work and say, yeah, there's nothing to it, there's actually templates all over antiquity that are visible. And that same template exists in all of them. If you don't see that template and you look at all these works and deny them, you're not seeing the template, you're not figuring it out. If, however, you are holding on to the religion and living a lifestyle within that religion. You're carrying that template, but you don't know the template is there. You are the carrier of the ark. Those who realize that there's something metaphorically in there that have to do with my own inner healing, my own inner path, we're the ones that open it up and see inside. The people that find this are going to be the people who understand what it is. Okay, there were some missing contents. Let's go on. Why was a person killed in touching it? Let's look at that real quick. Why was Uzzah struck dead while he was helping to transport the Ark of the Covenant? Was God being petty or harsh when he swiftly killed him? And they set the Ark of the Covenant upon a new cart, and Uzzah, he's the one that actually died. And Ahio drove the new cart. And when they came to Nachon's threshing floor, Uzzah reached out to the ark of God and took hold of it, for the oxen upset it, and the anger of the Lord was kindled against Uzzah, and God struck him there for the error. This is written in such a way that it sounds like a very bad thing to do. Just as an example of how to proceed, let's start and define the name Uzzah. What did it mean to them? The name Uzzah comes from a Hebrew verb, generally meaning to be strong. The verb means to be strong. Adjective means strong, mighty, or fierce. And adjective means mighty or powerful. And means strength, might, fierceness. So what we have here represented in this is that something in the ark has killed off that quality for some reason. We'd have to keep going through the story to unwind it all. But these are the kind of things that need to be done in order to understand what they're doing as far as they're using the analogs. This is not a true story. They're grabbing names that mean something, putting it in a story that is encoding something. We have to extract all of that. In this case, we had whatever the ark is, whatever it ends up being, something that is strong, mighty, or fierce that touches it gets wiped out. While meanwhile, I keep saying you can't see inside. Actually, the priest can see inside only. There's a few that can see inside. Now, if I was going to try to, as much as I can, maybe grasp that short verse process of interpretation, I would say, well, then I am the ark, and what I'm putting inside of me are these things that I'm going to need for my journey later on. I need my good qualities. I need my good garden. I need all of these things that I'm going to put away, and I'm going to protect them, and something strong from the outside. However, what was strong from the outside was looking to protect it. So you see, there's something that's not there yet. It has to go along further to unwrap. But you can see how those parts would work if you start playing with them like that. So while many might carry the ark, few can see inside of it. While many stand outside the narrow gate, only a few will enter in. While many are called, only a few are chosen. This is going to be a very repetitive theme. Now, if we can successfully extract all of that, mirror it in our psyche, shift the analogs from whatever their culture is to our time, we become the person who is no longer carrying the ark, but the one that sees inside. The ark is the material. It's the stories. It is what is telling us what to do. The stories are carrying instructions that once we decode them, what we will find is that we have interactive steps, mentally interactive steps that we can use in which to understand our plight in life, how we came about, how we got to the person we are, and then how to engage with that previous self to affect a change in life. I'm going to talk about a parallel teaching a little bit right here, and I always have done that, and some people say, why do you do that? And I understand now that that is how I see the template. I don't know what these guys are teaching. Nobody's telling us what they have in here. You can't grab one line of material and figure out that template. You don't have any comparisons. You can't see it. The more things you see and the more comparisons you make, the more that's how we find what they're doing, by finding the constant repetitive nature of it and understanding that it plays out in the psyche and that it is all conceptual. And once we make that transition across the board, we're going to find that everyone teaches one core teaching that is all held in these outer shells or arcs for the masses to carry in. Let's go to a Jesus story where he's in the temple throwing over tables and throwing out money changers and things like that. I've relied heavily in the past on a biblical scholar by the name of Bart Ehrman. I have a lot of material of his. If you don't know of who he is and you're interested in this kind of stuff, I'd recommend it. He doesn't go where I go. He's very well up there and whatnot, but he's in that realm of looking outward. I mean, he's way up there. He's got a lot of books and bestsellers. I think he's a professor at Chapel Hill. He's got a lot of material in the teaching company and whatnot. He's really big, very knowledgeable individual. And he goes on to discuss, he works things through in his mind the same way that we should all be doing it. You process things through. If that, then this. And if that happened, then what motivated it? You keep stepping beyond what you hear. And in this kind of a mental process, we begin to see things for what they really are. And it's easier to just manage them. So people do it naturally. There are people that learn to do it, and there's people that just do it on their own. At any rate, so he's going on and talking about the story, about that story, about Jesus flipping over the tables and what kind of sense does it make? Who is coming there, and what are they there for? The Jewish people. They're there for their biggest holiday. This is Passover. This is going to the Holy Land. But people are coming from all over the land, and they're on foot. So they're not bringing animals and things like that, but they also don't have a monetary system that is consistent. So they're coming from all over the place. They're bringing their money. They need to go. They're there to burn offerings to God. They're Jewish, burning offerings at the altar. So they need animals to do that. That's how they're working at that time. Yeah, so when people get there and they want to, what do? They have to exchange their money for something local. Then they have to buy some animals and then go to the priest and get it done. So this is presumably a Jewish thing that's going on. Why would Jesus do that? And there are people that I've heard argue, I don't even care about that. This just justifies straight up that it's okay to be violent. Jesus flipped over tables, throwing people out. That gives us permission to be like Jesus. They read it that way. I have heard another idea that this is one of the wedges that Jesus is driving between the old covenant, the old way, and the new way, that this is a Jewish holiday, and he's being throwing that out. We don't burn animals anymore. We're going to do something different from here on out. And that transition is happening there. So that is something that people can extract from it as well. In doing that, we still have inconsistencies. Who's right? How do you do it? So if we treat it always the same way, as if those are analogous terms that play out in the psyche, and they're always about the human and about the self, and that as we're doing that, we're also understanding within our own self as we watch the other people make the interpretations, they're interpreting it about the physical world, about physical actions, about here, about now, about the church, about the status of their religion. They're not interpreting it from looking outward, one of the many ways standing outside the narrow gate to the one that turns it inward. We do that, and once we do, then it comes online. This is the temple that are full of all of the things that we want to get rid of. So Jesus represents that part of us that is going back. That's the hero's journey participant in this case. In the analogous manner, you start off as Jesus, you're looking to be Christ. That's a tough one. You start off as Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha, and you end up as the Buddha. They just have different baggage packages, right? Okay. So we see there then that there's this idea that it is good to go into the temple and destroy things that are inside, because that is really what changes our life. What is inside of us comes out of us. Jesus tells us to go, if you're going to leave your gift at the altar, to go resolve aught against your brother first before you do that. We see there's a lot of places here where conceptually we're supposed to resolve mental issues. And when we go back into earlier times, they're doing the same thing, except they're doing it much earlier with different lingo and a different culture, different reasons for doing the analogous terms in the way they are. They don't sound the same anymore. I had to go back and clear that comment up. What I mean is that you take the material that appears under Jesus' time from approximately 2,000 years ago, and you analyze that, and you realize what it means, and you understand that they've been teaching the same thing all along, actually all the way from Babylonia, but the analogous terms keep changing as each new culture comes along. So what I mean is that when we're looking at the story of the Ark of the Covenant, that's what, 1,500 years older than the Jesus work. So the analogs are changing, but they're still conveying the same teachings. But they don't continue to fit. As people change, as we evolve, the religions have to evolve. They don't continue to fit. You get something like Christianity, which becomes malleable and flexible there. Boom. Why is it that way? Talked about that before. Because you only have to believe. You don't have to update anymore. It continually morphs. Christianity evolves with humanity. And I realize I should be careful with that verbiage too. The people will argue and say the Bible hasn't changed a little bit here and there. What I mean is that the nature of interpretation and cherry-picking capacity that is there, given the enabling process of all you have to do is believe, that the interpretation of what Jesus is and what God stands for continues to morph along with pretty much the ruling and the social elite in those Christianities, or the power heads within those. I don't mean to make that sound like a foil hat thing. They're big structures that are very complex. They're not that simple. But the morphing continues to happen as people continue to morph. We don't have the same value systems as we did have 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago. But guess what? Everything still fits. It's an obvious case where the Bible is not providing the value systems that drives a people, but that the people are driving the value systems that belong to God. So it doesn't have to change, and it continually provides that promise of eternal life. At any rate, I'm getting off subject like I do. We go back to the Ark of the Covenant then and see that this is conceptually what we're doing. The Ark is, however, a vehicle that is carrying something, so it's a little bit different. We are the Ark in stories. The Ark also, however, represents the idea that something is being carried. It's being carried up here all the time. The story is about that, but then the story itself is the Ark. Think fable. There's something in there. Somebody says, you got bats in your belfry. Who's going to go say, well, I don't have a belfry. I'm sorry. And I don't know how to catch bats. That's what people looking for the Ark sound like to me. The literal Ark. There's something else there. And it is difficult to make that transition. People a lot, yeah. Well, anyway, I wanted to say that. This is just kind of an overview. I did not give justice to the story of the Ark of the Covenant, nor did I even work on interpreting what those things are. The manna from the desert, remember 40 years in the desert, that's the time they were out there. That's the time to enlightenment. From when I start to when I'm finished. I start out in trying to leave my past behind. For this time frame, I only consume a certain thing, and in the end, I emerge. The same thing happens. The Jews use numbers for conceptual ideas. 40 is like this rebirth time frame. In fact, let me pull this up here and take a look. 40 is mentioned 146 times in Scripture. It generally symbolizes a period of testing, trial, or probation. Yeah, the 40 is going to be an analog that once you find out what it is, it's always going to be that same thing in this block of work. It might be something different elsewhere. There appears to be some competition going on between places and styles. Jason sailed with 40 Argonauts. Different use of the term 40. Stories kind of roughly contemporaneous time frame with each other. So you can see they knew of each other's stories and were somehow separating themselves from each other. In fact, I'm going to take a second here and walk into a realm I normally don't go, and that has to do with that kind of the big pattern sort of shifting. This is a deeper layer for people that are interested in it. It goes even, more fringe. The 40 here in Judaism is very predominant. If you see it in Greek myth, it's used for something different. So in Jason and the Argonaut story, the Argonautica, the 40 is being used at the point of the story where the 40 things are being gathered up for the adventure. So they're identifying 40 mental qualities or physical qualities, spiritual qualities, and that you're going to need to go on the trip. And they're using 40 to denote that. They're not using it the same way the Jews are using 40. But they're using 40, and you wonder why. But they're different from each other. So you go, well, why would that be? And you know they know of each other's stories. So somehow they're competing, or they're, I'm going to take your analog and obfuscate it in my work and do something different with it. Is it the masters having fun? Is it competition between storytellers? I don't know, cultures. But you can see that there. It's pretty fun. In fact, along those lines, this is incredibly premature to talk about. I'm playing with the Genesis stuff, and I'm not done with it. I look at it and I leave it alone. I look at it and I think I see something and I leave it alone. I'm not getting to it. But there's a point where I look at the parts in the stories where it goes from a polytheism to a monotheism, where we made man in our image, and then God saw that it was good. There's like this transition happening right there. And I keep looking at that going, what the hell is that about? That's just bizarre. I don't think it's an accident. But that would mean that somehow whoever is writing Genesis is part of a bigger network of things, and that's an instruction. That for this material, it's going to be monotheistic. We're shifting from the many gods to the one God. Wow. Yeah. See, premature, huh? At any rate, you see that stuff. So if you were to go through there and find everywhere 40 appears and read this story, what you're going to find is that somehow that this is a trial period or an observation period, some kind of a period that is going to be contained in that story. They're going to look for those conceptual similarities. Jesus is 40 days, 40 nights in the desert fasting. It rained for 40 days and 40 nights for the flood. All of these are preceding. When you find that 40, you're going to find a rebirth right after it, an emergence of something like that. That's what they're doing here. The manna from that, this represents that we bring this with us. We're bringing the idea that we've got the enlightenment there. We're bringing the 10 Commandments. They're not literal. You have to break those down too. What are these? They're ways of living. And again, I don't want to get into all of that. It is really, really deep. It is really deep. Yeah, if this doesn't interest you, it'll bore you very quickly. If you're interested in it, it'll keep you busy forever. It will. The Ark of the Covenant is here. It's the story. Verbal techniques are used to nest teachings inside of them from antiquity. It is their media. They're intelligent people telling stories that we've lost touch with. If you see enough of them, you see patterned things happening in there that you go, my gosh, I can see what they're doing. It sequences. You begin to see the conceptual ideas. The Ark is being carried every day. The Ark is not just the Bible. The Ark is everything that carries that monomyth template. Is an ark. It's a carrier. It's a vehicle for carrying something. We got it. Let's open it up. Hope this was fun. Love one another. I'll see you in the next video.